Try Jesus, don't try me, 'cause I throw hands. Try Jesus, please don't try me, because I'm fine. I have no problem laying these hands.
Welcome to SODFS, brought to you by Sons of Dynasty and proud members of the True North Fantasy Football. Follow us at Dynasty Sons and subscribe to the TNFF Network so that you never miss a show. I'm Dan. You can find me on Twitter at DanBrownNFL. And here to my left is Nate. You can find him at Nate_FFL. Nate, what's happening, my man? How are we doing tonight?
Well, tell you what, buddy, I've had better nights, but we're here and we're live and I'm chill. And I hope this goes smooth because the introduction to this has not been good.
Yeah, let me just take a quick moment to apologize to anybody tuning in. We were having some extreme technical difficulties while trying to get up and running between my internet out here in the sticks and Nate's computer that he seems to have downloaded some sort of virus causing problems. Apologies, but we're not going to hold you up anymore tonight. We appreciate you joining us. Nate, let's get into some news here around the NFL.
So there's a lot of news. We're going to jump back a little bit, though. I'm going to jump back to the J.K. Dobbins injury because it sucked for a lot of people. He's done for the year with the torn ACL. The Ravens' backfield is now looking like it's the Gus Edwards show. Dan, I'm not sure. Really, as good as friends as we are, I'm not sure how you feel about Dobbins. I'm not sure how you feel about Edwards. Personally, myself, I've been a big supporter of Edwards. I don't have anything against Dobbins. It was just somebody I've never really gotten heavy into, but with Dobbins done for the year, Edwards, the Gus Bus show looks to be in full effect in Baltimore. So I'm pretty stoked. I do have a lot of exposure to him in regular fantasy football leagues. So that's exciting. But with the Ravens, it's hard to tell because what's going to happen, they've got Tyson Williams back there. They've got Justice Hill, who's going to be the back behind Edwards. And the biggest thing I'm thinking of is Lamar just going to run even more because that's all he does. Edwards has been super efficient, though. If you look back throughout his career, 414 carries. He's averaging 5.2 yards per carry. Among running backs with at least 100 carries in 2020, Edwards ranked 10th, so that's super promising. I'm pretty stoked. I won't be as excited, though, as if the Ravens pick up Mark Engram because he's not a free man yet. He's still in Houston, but something just keeps lingering, telling me that Ingram's not going to be with the Texans long. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, very unfortunate. I too have a bunch of J.K. Dobbins shares across my dynasty leagues, across many of best ball drafts that I did this offseason. I too was into Gus Edwards when J.K. Dobbins was still healthy. Now at this point, even with J.K. Dobbins out of the picture, I think that Edwards' price tag is going to start to get up into that range that I'm not comfortable pulling the trigger on him. So kudos to him if you were able to lock him up in the latter rounds before the injury took place. But we know Baltimore, they use a running back by committee approach. Gus Edwards, he hasn't had many receptions throughout his entire playing career, whether it be college or even here in the NFL. I think he's sub 20 receptions across his 3-year career here in the big leagues. So without that reception upside, I just don't feel like, you're going to really get what you're hoping for. Maybe a couple of games where he breaks off 150 and 2. But that's really kind of best case scenario, I think, with him. But we don't need to spend any further on the Ravens here. Let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Irv Smith out for the season after undergoing surgery to repair a ligament damage in his knee. The Vikings did end up trading for Jets tight end Chris Herndon to help fill the void, and will also continue to lean on Tyler Conklin, who was the tight end 2 behind Irv Smith, that Zimmer actually spoke pretty highly of this past offseason. A quote here from Zimmer: it's really not so much roles. It's really about Conklin. He's a good player and using these guys to their abilities. Not so much roles that each guy has. We were planning to use Irv a little bit more on third downs as a slot receiver. Probably won't do that now. Probably go 3 wides. Some of those things we just have to adapt and change. So it doesn't look like that necessarily either one of these tight ends is really going to step in and become super relevant here in 2021. I've spent many of tickets on the myth we call Chris Herndon. And while the rejuvenation juices are flowing with a new landing spot there with Captain Kirk Cousins, I am going to, hold my expectations to nothing substantial, maybe a middling tight end 2. And if they both find some sort of relevance here, they could definitely limit each other's upsides. As I like to say, 2 relevant tight ends equals 0 relevant tight ends. But moving on, T.Y. Hilton banged up, short-term IR. Nate, what are your thoughts on the case moving forward for the Indianapolis Colts and the receiving options made available to the unvaccinated Carson Wentz?
My question is, do we care outside of games where Hilton's against the Houston Texans? Because, that's the only time he seems to show up anymore. No disrespect to T.Y. Hilton. I like him. It's fine. The question becomes, which wide receivers are going to get the targets? Wentz is expected to be back, so that's good news. But is it Michael Pittman? Is it Paris Campbell? Is it Eric Pascal? If we're talking regular fantasy football, we're probably going to go Pittman. If we're talking DFS, though, I'm leaning into the contrarian roles because there's a good chance Campbell or Pascal break out with a 7-catch, 80-yard game here and there. So it kind of depends on what we're talking, but it's just kind of a messy situation right now.
Yeah, definitely. Moving along, though, to the Patriots, big news, Cam Newton cut, Mac Jones, it's his time now in New England. Jones was one of the most pro-ready quarterbacks that we saw coming into this year's draft, while one of the polarizing prospects at the quarterback position. Does he not possess the upside athleticism that we've seen from the long sought after Justin Fields and Trey Lance and even Zach Wilson with the buzz that's surrounding him? But I do like Mac Jones, and him coming in and essentially taking that job away from Cam Newton in Belichick's system, I think really gives a vote of confidence to anybody that has rostered him at this point. Are you buying into Cam Newton and the weapons, to Mac Jones and the weapons around him there in New England this year?
The real question for me is who expected this? I don't think anybody expected Cam to be cut before the season was started. This is baffling to me. I think it's great personally, especially for me. I own a lot of Mac Jones. I think he was obviously the most pro-ready quarterback in the draft. I'm not saying he's going to be great. Who knows what his numbers will be? Time will tell on that. The wide receiver situation in New England is just as iffy as the running back situation. If you've been playing fantasy football before, you know that it's just something you got to kind of roll with the punches with. I'm just honestly shocked that Cam's gone. That just blows my mind, dude.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Shout out to my guy, Jacoby One Kenobi, there in New England. Love that guy. As far as the New York Giants go, Evan Engram, suffered a calf injury last preseason game, but as of today, he was back fully padded in practice and is expected to suit up against the Broncos in Week 1. So at this point, I don't think that the injury is anything to worry about heading into your drafts this upcoming weekend. So, Nate, I think that's pretty much it from news and notes for tonight. But let me take a quick second to tell you about our friends over at Monkey Knife Fight. Monkey Knife Fight is the fastest growing DFS platform in the industry right now, affiliated with the NFL, Major League Baseball, and the National Hockey League teams. Their product is just as strong as their brand power. With DFS prop games in all sports of leagues and skill levels, they are sure to have something for you. To get in on the action, sign up at monkeyknifefight.com and use promo code TNFF on your first deposit for an instant match up to $50. So if you drop $50 on your first deposit, Monkey Knife Fight matches you, and you've got $100 to get there and start playing. Again, that's monkeyknifefight.com, and use the promo code TNFF to be used on your first deposit. Let's go in. I know that there's a lot of people that are just starting to get into the DFS, the game. Essentially, there's a lot of new guys, a lot of our buddies, even whether it be the True North guys or others that we talk with regularly via Twitter. They see the DFS going on, but they've heard the stories about how it's a rigged game. Unless you're a shark, it's a waste of money and you're going to light it on fire. Well, I think having a better understanding of the games in particular, and you can really kind of find a way to get in there without having to be swimming with the big sharks, and give yourself a shot to win a little bit of cash. So, for the newbies getting into the game, we're going to go over a few terms and a little bit of game theory here over the course of this next segment. And, go over some common terms and strategies here in DFS. Mostly DraftKings will be what we're using, which is a PPR league, essentially, as far as DFS goes. It is 1 point per reception. Nate, tell them a little bit about what the difference is between cash games and tournaments.
So the thing with me that I think of, it depends on who you are, where you're starting, okay? But we wanted to kind of target this show at the more novice players of DFS. So if you're new to it, obviously it's super appealing to enter tournaments. You think, obviously all of us want to be rich. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do. I play a lot of GPPs, but it's also important to consider cash games because cash can build your bankroll. So when it comes to cash, there's a couple different things here that you're going to hear some terminology that might be foreign to you if you're new to it. That is head-to-head, 3-man leagues, 50-50, or double-ups. So head-to-heads are basically just how they sound. It's you against one other guy. The fee could be 10 cents. It could be 25 cents. It could be $5. It could be $100. DraftKings does take a small portion. So if you're playing a head-to-head, you're not going to get exactly 50% of your winnings back. But this is a good, really, really, really good thing for somebody that's new to DFS. Or even somebody that's been in DFS a while, because you want to build your bankroll. You don't want to be dipping in your wallet every week. 3-man leagues is something that's a little bit less known, but it's still a very productive thing because especially early in the year, you're going to find a lot of novice players. You're going to find a lot of guys that aren't used to playing, are not used to the rules, they're not used to the scoring. If you're up against two other guys, you're going to take down a good chunk of money if you can play those. As far as the 50-50s and double-ups, that can range from a wide variety. I mean, you could have 100 guys in a double up. 50% of those roughly are going to take home, some money. So 50 guys, 48, whatever. DraftKings does take a small amount. You'll hear a lot. If you listen to a lot of DFS shows, you're going to hear a lot of guys say, cash, it's whatever. Other guys will say, all I play is cash. For me, I think it's important to have a balance. You're not going to hear that everywhere. You're going to want to have some exposure to cash, some exposure to GPPs, so that, like I said, you're not dipping in your wallet. With 50-50s, I think that's a really good way to go, especially if you're new, because you're going to have a good mix of new players, a good mix of veterans. But at the end of the day, you're going to end up at least making your money back. So don't end up running yourself short by just playing GPPs. I really want to stress that. And like I said, you could listen to another outlet. They might say, don't worry about it. Another one might say, just, only play cash. But I think if you can have a half and half share, you can cut yourself at least the chance of breaking even that weekend. So I highly stress playing some cash games to limit your I guess I would say chance of running yourself short.
Yeah, you know, Nate, typically with cash game builds, I tend to want to pay down at the quarterback position and spend up on my 2 starting running backs. Running back is the one position that volume is most important and also the most predictable outside of quarterbacks. I try to pay down at tight end position. While I agree that having a top 3, top 4 tight end can really, you know, create some great upside for you. A lot of times those top couple of guys end up with pretty high ownerships in the end, and they're priced like these top tier wide receivers. You know, you're basically paying for a top 10 wide receiver with that tight end, top 3, top 4 tight ends. So I typically like to pay down at tight end, pay down at quarterback. That with the quarterback position, you know, obviously these top few guys can really hit those weeks that will set you apart from your Matt Ryans and your Kirk Cousins and everybody else that doesn't really possess that rushing upside. But you know, you're going to pay a couple $1,000 extra to roster one of those guys. If you can play the matchups, find a little bit cheaper of a quarterback play, you know, that you can hit with, I think that can really allow you to do some nice things and get the stability at the running back and wide receiver position. Also in the flex position, I like to put an additional running back. So I'm actually rostering 3 running backs in my cash game lineups. Like I mentioned before, the volume is predictable, the touches can be predictable, and typically game script you can read pretty well for the top running back option. So I really find myself building my cash game lineups around the running back position.
Let me just say too, before we move on, with cash games, it's a lot easier. You don't have to go contrarian. You don't have to worry, like, let me find that deep dive. Just nail down the chalk plays. Chalk is something we'll get into in a little bit, but nail down the guys that are going to score points, because at the end of the day, having variation isn't going to matter as much in cash. You just want to outscore your opponent.
Yeah, and with cash games explained, let's move on to the tournaments. Okay, this is where you can, you know, up your risk a little bit, possibly hit it big, like Nate mentioned. When, you know, we all want to get paid, we all want to be part of that milli maker. You know, and this is where DFS for myself, and I know for many of others, really kind of gets fun. While cash plays is fun and building those lineups. You know, getting in to try to be a little bit different and building lineups, telling yourself a story of not only what you want to do and what you think is going to happen, but what the other entries that are going to be in the said contest are thinking, and how you can get a little bit different from that. You know, make sure you're comfortable with the risk factor, because once you're out of the beginning leagues, there are a lot of good players out there that have probably been doing this for a while. If you're ready to jump into GPPs, though, let's talk about which tournaments are best to start out with that will provide you for the best opportunity to be successful.
This is by far my favorite part of DFS playing. Single entry tournaments. So for the newbies, if you're just getting into DFS, you will be in the beginner leagues. If you follow our show, we'll do our best to make sure that you are bringing home some money. So say you make it, you know, past the beginner leagues, you can be in this thing for 10 years straight. Hit them single entry tournaments, because I'm telling you what, they pay out a higher percentage. That's something that a lot of people don't think about when they're entering tournaments. You know, they look at the milli maker, they look at, you could be playing any sport. You could be playing NASCAR. You look at the $4 entry with $10,000 to the winner. You're like, oh, I want to win that. Problem is they only pay out 16% of the winners. So do your research is my best advice. Do your homework. Look into the payout structure of every tournament before you hit, you know, send, because there's tournaments that pay out 16. There's tournaments that pay out 18. There's tournaments that go all the way up to 24%. If you can hit a single entry tournament where you're not getting bombarded by sharks. And a disclaimer, we're not sharks. We are just like you guys. We're just having fun. You know, we don't do this as a job. But if you can hit a single entry tournament, you're going to put yourself in a far better position to win money every week, because you're not going to be playing against 150 lineups that are computer generated with an algorithm. Nobody wants to do that. So really hit your single entry tournaments. They can start as low as $1. They can range up to, I've seen them over $1,000. So take your time, do your homework, do your research, hit them single entries, and, you know, really think about where you're spending your money, because it's very beneficial to not jump into something where only 16% of the winners are getting paid out, because the bottom percentage of those 16% are only going to make a few bucks.
Yeah. Now, another question is, who do I need to be targeting, based off of, the game that I'm playing and the build that I'm trying to achieve based off of that game. The style in which we play fantasy football, we often set our lineups is different from one person to the next. Everybody's got their own information. And while a lot of us are digesting similar information, there is no right or wrong answer when you're building your lineup, but there are some things that are worth focusing on as far as roster construction goes, based on the game that you are playing. Let's take a look at some things that you should attempt to do, as well as some terminology you want to become familiar with to make your life a little bit easier.
So the first thing I want to jump into is stacking. If you're new to DFS, you might not know what stacking is. If you've been around for a long time, obviously you are very well aware that stacking leads to points. Stacking has shown the highest correlation in terms of data. Correlation is basically a term used to say relevance. So my thing is you want to stack. If you're playing cash, if you're playing GPP, if you're playing the Millie Maker, if you're playing a head-to-head, stacking is still going to benefit you, because, for example, say you play Kyler Murray, he's going to throw 3 touchdowns. Say he throws 3 touchdowns. If you can line up the wide receiver in that same game that's going to catch those passes, you're just expanding your points, exponentially. So obviously you could go DeAndre Hopkins. If you're in a cash game, you probably want to lean, the wide receiver that's going to be the more well-known. If it's Josh Allen, it's Stephon Diggs, etc. If you're in a GPP play, you still want to stack, but you might want to branch down to, if you're playing Roethlisberger, maybe you go instead of Deontay Johnson, you go, take a chance on Claypool, something like that. But stacking wide receivers with your quarterback is going to pay off. Now, there's other ways to stack too, and we'll get into that. You can do double stacking. You can go 2 wide receivers with your quarterback. You could go a wide receiver and a running back. It just kind of depends. Data has shown lately, from what I have seen, and this is not confirmed, this is just what I've seen. Data has shown that wide receivers are better to stack. Wide receivers are better in the flex. I could be wrong. This is just what I've looked at. But say I'm playing, Sam Darnold, the Panthers. You could go the obvious answer. Some people, I would say the heavier bet would be DJ Moore. You could go Robbie Anderson there. You could go Christian McCaffrey. So there's variations of stacking. There's different ways to approach it. If you're going to go running back in the flex, if you're going to go with a running back stack, you're going to probably want a PPR guy, because that's how DraftKings rolls. But there's different ways to look at it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, the great thing about GPP is finding ways to make that stack, but not a stack that's going to be highly owned, like you mentioned. Sam Darnold, DJ Moore, obviously probably up there. Same with Robbie Anderson. Those 2 guys are going to have a little bit higher percentage than to say a rookie like Terrace Marshall, and rightfully so. But if you can be right and hit on the Marshall call, obviously your odds, just because your stack is that much more contrarian to a high ownership stack, can really lead to setting your lineup different from other individuals, setting yourself apart from the field. Getting into contrarian and chalk plays, Nate, did you have something else to add?
I just wanted to give a little sneak peek to week 1. I don't know how much Jets football you've been watching, but I'm really, really digging Zach Wilson and Corey Davis stack for week 1. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, I'm liking how that game's shaping up to start as well. But talking about, chalk plays and contrarian plays, the term chalk and contrarian are very important in DFS. Chalk means players that are projected to be highly owned, and contrarian means players that are projected to be lower owned. So what you want to do is find a guy who has a good matchup and play him. If Dalvin Cook is facing a team with a poor run defense, you want him in your lineup. However, a lot of other individuals are picking up on that same cue. When they see Dalvin Cook, a top tier running back in the NFL, start against a bottom 10 run defense with the little green, 28 or 29 as far as verse run defense there, you can bank on that player being highly owned on that slate, and it's more of a cash game at that rate, or a chalk play versus a contrarian or a GPP play. Now, don't get me wrong, you can use guys like Dalvin Cook, who might even be chalk that week, in a GPP build. It's just important that the rest of your roster construction varies enough to not be chalky with the chalk individual, such as Dalvin Cook. One example for week 1 of the 2021 NFL season could be tight end George Kittle versus the Detroit Lions. We know Detroit historically has been pretty terrible against the tight end position, and I expect no different this year, as they've struggled to identify linebackers that can actually work in that defense. But the term contrarian means that you want to find a guy who's going to have a good week, but not everyone is playing him. Obviously, this is where things get tough. You want to look at matchups once again, but instead of going with the obvious plays, you might take Derrick Henry is playing one of the stouter run defenses in the league, and you've been seeing analysts on Twitter and CBS, ESPN writing articles about how Derrick Henry is a big-time fade this week. Well, that light bulb should be going off above your head saying, hey, all of a sudden I might have a GPP play right here. So, you got to pay attention to what's happening around, and all of us being the Twitter degenerates that we are, we see this flowing through constantly. You can almost instantly tell who's getting hyped up this week, who's everybody seem to be fading. Well, you can use that information to your knowledge when you're trying to get a little more contrarian. When I first started playing DFS, I really kind of struggled. Nate, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say a few things before we jumped off here. There's a couple things that are important. So when it comes to chalk, a lot of people think, oh, if you're playing GPP, chalk, can't touch it. No, that's absolutely not true. If you're going to find the right chalk play, you want to hit that. I mean, you want to play your chalk. Don't be afraid. Don't be sissified. Play your chalk plays. Play McCaffrey if it's a good matchup. If you're playing a wide receiver that's chalk, if you're playing Calvin Ridley, look at who he's facing up against across the line, because it's extremely important. One-on-one matchups for wide receivers have shown a great correlation as far as, making money, because if your star wide receiver is facing an Arizona Cardinals DB this year, chances are he's not good. So, really look into the matchups, especially for wide receiver. Don't be afraid to play your chalk. Don't go overly chalk, though. That's all I want to say. I didn't want to dive into it too bad. You want to be careful. I don't know if you've noticed this. I've been playing this for far too long. When it comes to flex spots, the way the flex spot has been played over the last few years has seemed to transition. I'm not sure if anybody else has noticed this. I could be nuts. It used to be stud running backs, or it used to be not stud. It used to be running backs in the flex spot, because running backs were priced softer before. Running backs used to minimum out at 3K. That's not the case anymore. They're 4K now. So, I mean, you got to be careful. You want to, see where it's beneficial. Right now, obviously, the NFL is throwing far more than it ever has. I mean, everybody's airing it out. Pass catchers are just becoming extremely valuable. So, watch when you think chalk versus contrarian, find that balance. It's going to vary from cash to GPP. Obviously, for cash games, chalk is going to be fine. You want maybe a slight contrarian play. You don't have to worry about it too much. If you're playing GPP, though, just don't be afraid to play your studs. That's my biggest thing. Play your damn studs.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started really getting into DFS, I was kind of going through trying to just identify, who I thought was going to be a good play, who I thought was going to smash that week, and that was pretty much the only thing that I was really taking into consideration. I thought I was smarter than the field. I know, I'm in this football game, 365 year round playing dynasty football, there's not a piece of news that comes out that my eyes don't touch. I can do this. I can pick the best plays. And the problem is the best plays aren't always good enough to win you in these GPP tournaments. So I really struggled to figure out how to get better with my GPP strategy and approach. And it wasn't until I really kind of had an example that I came across, and forgive me, I can't remember who this came from, but we were all familiar with the game of poker. Let's say you're playing a hand with two other individuals. All parties go all in pre-flop. Both of your opponents are holding ace queen. Which hand would you prefer to have? King queen or king jack? Obviously, it is the latter one, king jack. Even though it's theoretically the weaker hand, it keeps you alive, giving you more outs and a higher chance of winning that hand. The same exact process is true here in DFS. The more common your opponent's lineup and the more yours is differentiated from the field, the better your odds are. So it's being able to swallow that and understand that the best lineup's not always the one you want to have. You need to know what the other lineups are, and luckily with DFS you can actually kind of find that out. We'll get into probably another episode. We'll get into the importance of a late swap. It's been a strategy that I've really been trying to implement from this past year on. It's like getting to see your opponent that has that ace king pre-flop, and essentially you can back build some of these lineups as you're coming into the the afternoon games, and really try and figure out, do I need to swap it up here? Am I trailing, or am I going to settle for just being in the green, maybe doubling up my money, but not getting there? No, we're not doing that here. You got to check out these lineups, and it takes time. I mean, if you're really serious about getting into these GPPs, it's not a build a lineup on Sunday morning and forget about it. You gotta be tuned in and really able to adapt based on how the guys that you had in the early games have performed versus how your opponents. If you're down big, it might be time to get a little bit more contrarian once again here with the late swap, but we won't get too further into that. Nate, let's talk a little bit about value plays on a slate and how that can be beneficial to your build on any given slate.
So obviously value is a term that probably all of us are familiar with. The best thing about the beginning of the year, I will stress this 1,000 times over the next, however many episodes. The beginning of the year, there is value everywhere. These rookies are way underpriced. Kyle Pitts, week 1, 4,400. How do you not play him? I don't care if he's 60% owned. He's in my lineup. Value is a thing where it's the only way you're going to win because you want to fit your studs in, right? So if you're paying 8,800 for Christian McCaffrey, you're gonna have to find value. So value is not really rocket science. It's basically just looking at who's underpriced. You'll sometimes even with I've noticed this with DK DraftKings way too much. A guy like Adam Thielen could have a stellar week and his price will drop. Play him. You know what I mean? Values are going to get you the guys you need in your lineup. So I'm not going to dive too far into it, but the beginning of the year is gold. I mean, every rookie from Rondale Moore to Elijah Moore to Kyle Pitts to every rookie is just way underpriced. These guys that are going to be getting a ton of snaps week 1, this is just the best. This is like Christmas for DFS players.
Yeah, no, week 1, they released the pricing almost 2 weeks ago now or whatever it was. And, they had to come up with pricing for all these guys before we even knew who was going to make the 53-man rosters. So, pricing is kind of outrageous. Mac Jones, I don't know what his salary is. I can't remember, but I'm assuming
it's low.
I'm assuming it is pretty low. And now knowing that he has the starting position, while it's not necessarily a play that you're thinking is super sexy, obviously a rookie coming out week 1, taking the job, it's sure as hell going to be in a couple of GPP lineups that I'm going to build. 4,800 is what it looks like. Coach Craig is saying, and if you can lock in a quarterback that can perform, it's not hard to bring back value at 4,800 at the quarterback position. And that really allows you to do a lot of interesting things with your lineup, getting able to pay up for some of those chalky running backs. Maybe, Bo's also mentioning the Darnold revenge game. And, it's one that I'm definitely excited about as well. I think Nate and I were talking about that game earlier in the week. It's going to be a good one for sure. Nate, are there any other games? I know we're gonna break down and discuss week 1 thoroughly 1 week from today, next Thursday, and really talk about that main slate. But I know you and myself have kind of already been diving in to this slate for a couple of weeks now already, and as more news unfolds on a daily basis, I find myself wanting to go back and tinker around. I've set lineups, a few different ones, and I've gone back and had to adjust them already a few times. But are there any other games or players that you really find yourself gravitating towards for week 1?
One thing that's really interesting. One thing I want to say is, touching on the Mac Jones thing, I think it's awesome. That is a good value. Don't be afraid to look at the opposite side of the ball because, DST obviously isn't something we all pay down at DST. Week 1, the Patriots, I believe, have the Dolphins. That Dolphins defense ain't bad. So it's somebody you're going to want to look at when you're setting your DFS lineup because there's a good chance Mac Jones ain't going to come out and, be a stud. He could be, but he could struggle at first too. So let's look at our DSTs. I just know, man, I'm so excited. Even though we've had a ton of issues tonight, my camera right now is on about, low def as possible. My computer's jacked. I'm just happy to be here. I can't really put into words what it means to everybody that's listening, that you're supporting us. Dan, that you're here. Brother Matt obviously has done a ton of work. Travis over at True North has believed in us. This has just been, it's a dream come true to be here. I'm honored. I'm stoked. And I promise to have better camera quality when we come back.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was right there with you when 8:45 was rolling around, 15 minutes to showtime. We were having every technical difficulty you could imagine. My internet,
we still are.
My internet had gone, down the crapper, and your computer still having its issues, and I hope that you are able to get that fixed. And what they say brings viruses on the computers. I'm not saying it. I'm just saying, look out. But I do want to say an absolute big shout out to our guy, Brother Matt, who is helping us produce this show. He, believe it or not, he is actually in the StreamYard with us right now. You don't see him. He's backstage, running through all these overlays, the tickers, the comments. This is a 3-man production right here, even though you're only staring at our 2 beautiful faces right here. Matt said his face just wasn't up to par with these 2 young bucks right here, and he'd rather stay backstage. So hat tip to my brother Matt there, who is backstage right now. None of this would be possible without him. And also just take a moment, make sure you are following the Sons of Dynasty. All of our SODFS content will be coming out via that Twitter page and on the True North ffb.com website. Nate, tell the viewers a little bit about the new website launch and what they can find over there.
So this has been beyond a long time in the making. Over at True North, we have been working so hard, so much on this. It's finally here. I have never been more excited for a website launch as the new True North site. You're going to want to go check it out. It's going to be easier to find with Google algorithms. If you don't know about that, go into Google, type in True North fantasy football. You're going to find us. It's beautiful. I'm just honored to be a part of this. Honestly, I've been around a lot of sites, a lot of groups, a lot of people. This is my family. You know what I mean? This is everything to me. So we've been putting our literal blood, sweat, and tears into this damn thing. So we're ready to go.
Yeah, big shout out to all of our friends there at True North. Being a part of that family, like you said, has really been something special. Every single one of those guys that's part of True North would go to bat for me, and likewise, I would go to bat for them as well. So I do advise you to go check out the new website launch for TrueNorthFFB.com. They are actually doing a shirt giveaway. All you got to do is check out the website. Send in a little email link there and just kind of tell them what you like about the site. But more importantly, tell us what you don't like about it. True North is always wanting to get better, and we want to make sure that we're providing you with the content that you want to see, whether it's statistics. Ty, the statistical magician, he has so many great assets that he is adding to this site, and it's all yours absolutely free. And not only that, we want to get better. We want to make it everything that you want it to be. So now Nate and myself will be providing DFS content there. Sons of Dynasty and Sons of DFS actually has a direct page there on the True North website. But I do strongly suggest you go check it out and take a shot to win a free t-shirt. But speaking of free t-shirts, believe it or not, Sons of DFS is actually giving away a free shirt as well. None of us even have these shirts yet. You can see it there on the layover with the SODFS logo. That is hot off the press. Like I mentioned, none of us even have one of these yet. I myself am going to get one here ASAP. I know my two brothers here will as well. But we are actually going to give one of those away. And all you have to do is subscribe to the TNFF Network on YouTube. Make sure you're following Dynasty Sons. That's at Dynasty Sons. And send us a DM of a screenshot of you being or of you following the TNFF Network on YouTube, and we will put your name into a drawing for a free SODFS shirt here in the next couple weeks. So stay tuned. Make sure you do that and send us some DMs of the screenshots so that way we can put your name into the drawing. You could be the very first one to ever have this shirt. As a matter of fact, no, you are going to be the very first one. Nate, Matt, we're all going to hold off on ordering a shirt for a week or two here so we can give everybody a chance to be the very first owner of a SODFS shirt from our partners there at Veridian Global. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Veridian Global at this point. It is the best quality, the best design, and the best fit that you can get for fantasy football apparel. Big shout out to our friends. We stay decked out. I've got my Deont Bay shirt on right now. There's no wide receiver in the NFL that I have more roster shares of than Deontay Johnson right now across all my leagues. I'm a huge Deontay guy, so I had to get my Deont Bay shirt from our friends over at Veridian Global. Nate, anything else you want to tell the people before we get out of here?
I want to follow up that shout out to Will. Will's the most stand-up dude I probably know on the planet. So, Will, I love you. Veridian is the shit. So definitely check them out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So make sure you enter for a couple of free t-shirts. Like I mentioned, the True North website t-shirt that is up for grabs, as well as the SODFS swag that is coming your way from Veridian Global. Other than that, I appreciate everybody tuning in or listening for the very first episode of Sons of DFS. And be sure to join us next Thursday as we break down the Week 1 main slate for DraftKings. Much love to everybody.
SODFS is for entertainment only and to add value to your sports experience. We give you our advice and strategy that we will employ ourselves. SODFS is not intended for those under the age of 18.
That's